about 9 times the speed of sound. Roger.
What's up, guys? It's Emil at Eurotrash Motorsports. Today's video is going to be a little bit interesting. So you may have seen my videos on turbo upgrades for the T1N Sprinter van. Probably one of my favorite vehicles out and about. Amazing work truck. We use these to tow my car trailer. We've towed this race car with the trailer full of parts, still averaging 11 liters per 100. Phenomenal vehicles. But these things are getting a bit old. So this is a 2006. The other truck we've got is a 2003. So you can imagine, as they're getting old, things start really falling apart. Most of the times the problems are engine related, and a lot of folks end up throwing them away because of Black Death. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But they'll generally go forever. The bodies are fairly decent, the doors start rotting, that kind of stuff, but I mean the truck is pretty solid. Now we picked this one up for a pretty good price. I think we paid about $1,000 for it, something like that. It had an engine issue, but that said, we actually drove it back for about 600 kilometers with this engine issue. No brakes. I think something else was going on with it, but we got it home. It's a good truck, runs well. Recently my dad started complaining of some knocking in the back end. So we went back and thought there's going to be the regular sway bar bushings or shocks, whatever, but it turns out it's not. And I absolutely have to show you what this is. It's a little strange. I've never actually seen this before. It's a little scary, to be honest. And if you can notice the issue by yourself straight up without me pointing it out, but right about there we have a shear in the leaf spring for the truck. So the entire weight on this right now is basically lying on this bracket up at the top here. So basically the leaf spring's sheared in the middle and is kind of pushing this piece. So today what we're gonna do is basically take the entire rear axle off with the leaf springs. We're gonna replace the leaf springs and we're gonna throw another rear axle on. And the reason we're doing that is because we were able to find one at the junkyard. And it's a little bit easier to try and replace the whole thing, because I believe the other half shaft is also shot. So instead of trying to take the shafts out and trying to service it that way, we're actually going to drop the entire rear end, replace the leaf springs, and put another rear axle back on. While we're doing this, we're going to replace the shocks. These are, I don't know if they're original, but they certainly look like it. We're going to replace some bushings and generally service the rest of the rear end. Now this is a fairly decent sized job. This is a heavy truck. Unfortunately, it does not go up on my lift. It just won't fit in the garage. So we are stuck using, all sorts of wooden blocks to support the weight and stuff like that. If you're ever going to attempt this on your own, please be careful. This got the potential of becoming very messy if something does let go. The rear axle is pretty heavy. If you've ever done one on the truck, they're not very light, but it has to be done. This is a daily work truck, and this is 100% unacceptable and 100% not safe, especially considering how much load we actually put in and how much we tow with this van. All right, so if you ever need to do this, stick around and let's get this job done. First things first, we have to basically take everything off of this. So all of the big bolts, these ones are a big problem. I haven't been able to take them off on the other two axles that we took out. The problem is that these are not available at Mercedes currently. So we have to save the ones off of this truck or risk it being on the blocks for a few weeks, if not more. These are back ordered from Germany, so it's not like I don't want to order them. It's just they're not available. If somebody has a source for these, please comment below. Let me know where we can get those. For now, these are going to be a problem. The ones back here are also a problem, the big guys. Basically everything's a problem. This is a high mileage truck in Canada, so everything's covered in salt and road grime. So enough said. Let's do it. We're just about ready to drop the whole thing. We have to disconnect the leaf springs next, but I just wanted to show you what sort of what's involved. So it's not a very complicated job, like I said earlier. Very heavy, obviously don't get hurt, but otherwise not too complicated. So far I think the biggest issue we've had are the 4 U-bolts holding the leaf springs to the axle. When we took the other one, we couldn't get these off with enough heat. You saw me, I spent quite a bit of time with the torch here. With enough heat, these things came undone pretty well. I haven't taken them off because frankly I think if I completely loosen them up, this thing is just gonna fall apart and it's gonna go flying. So we're gonna get the jacks under now to get that out. So basically, step by step, fairly straightforward. Get the caliper out. Okay, this comes off. After that, sway bar, disconnect it, 2 bolts, one here, one there. You saw me cut the handbrake or the emergency brake cables. We don't use the emergency brake on these. I think we've pretty much deleted them on every single Sprinter we have. Yeah, it won't pass safety, but we don't use it. So this is more of a concern for somebody buying it after. If they want to retrofit the handbrake, by all means, go ahead. We do not use it because frankly, this is what it looks like. They just rust to hell back here, especially because they're not being used. Anyways, so those cables are gone. The same goes for the brake sensor cables. We usually cut these out because we don't really care. These ones don't, as long as they don't short to ground, they're not going to trigger anything, so you can just cut them right out. Not a big deal. Once you've got these 4 undone, basically the last thing we're going to do is 4 bolts holding the leaf spring. So you've got one end over there to the back, one end over there to the front. They are a little tricky, but nothing too complicated about those. The shocks, the rear shocks, come off pretty easy. I've undone both of these. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna let them hang on the shock just as an extra precaution, because if everything falls off and it's still hanging on the shock, the whole thing just kind of swings in and hangs off on the rear shock. So it's a bit of a safety thing. The last thing is the drive shaft, which you have to take off from there. As you can see, we've taken that off already. That's actually pretty straightforward. 4 bolts holding it, very good access to there. So not really anything to be worried about. So that's it. Let's get the 4 leaf spring bolts out, front and back on each side. Let's drop this on the ground, get it out of the vehicle, and then we can inspect this a little bit better. The trickiest part of the whole thing are the 2 rear bolts holding the leaf spring in. All right, so it's your leaf spring, that's the back of the car, and there's a bolt that goes from there through there. The head of the bolt is there, the nut is at the back, so you really have to get something back here. And the problem is it's very dirty, so really rusty, and it's very tight. So we've stripped the other side because you really cannot get a good enough wrench up here to hold the nut. So just be very careful. What we ended up doing on one of them when we were taking the other one is to actually beat this up so that you get some more clearance here to get a nice tool to hold the nut. Right, before we start putting all of this back together, I just wanted to show you guys what I think happened here. So the leaf spring has a sort of centering pin that ends up going into the axle right there. All right, so this is the broken one. You can kind of see that it's split right where the pin is. So I suspect what happened was probably got some water in here. You had a crack from where they put the pin in, and then just split the leaf spring out. Now, the one we've taken out and want to put back in, actually, the pins have rotated. So I don't know, that's not now. This happened before, so the pins have rotated. So they're not on the leaf springs that we've got. So these leaf springs came with the axle. So the pins are not on here. So sometime during the operation of the truck, we took these off. These pins have spun around. So anyways, I gotta take these pins out so we can center the whole thing on the leaf springs once we actually put them on. All right, guys, day 2. We have finished all of the removal of the components, cleanup, and everything else. So now we're just gonna go put it back together. This is the spare rear axle. The other one is over there. I'm gonna keep that for spare parts in the future. So basically what we're gonna do now, put the leaf springs on this, slide it in place, and then replace the actual rear shocks because they're, you know, garbage. So we gotta change those, put the calipers back on, mount everything back on the axle, and basically finish the job. Pretty straightforward. Let's get it done. That's about it for the actual job. Now, as far as job complexity goes, it's not very hard. Okay, like there's nothing really all that complicated about it, but the rear axle is very heavy. So if you don't have good conditions to take it off, you know, obviously just be very careful. As far as cost goes, the leaf springs I think were quoted from Mercedes at about $800 a pop, so each side. The U-bolts are back ordered, and I think they're $20 or $30 a piece. 1, 2, 3, 4 on each side, and so on and so forth. Since you're gonna go ahead and take this off, this is a great time to combine a few jobs at the same time. You have to take the shocks off anyways, so good time to replace your shocks. Good time to replace sway bar bushings and the hangers there. Good time to replace brakes because you're taking them off anyways. And as you're gonna see now, the last thing we're gonna do is change the oil on the diff because we've already got it up. And as I said, this rear axle came off a junkyard, so who knows what the condition of the diff oil is. All right, so when it comes to the diff, there's your drain plug right there. That's the fill plug right there. Now this is a rubber cap or grommet or whatever you want to call it. So normally what you want to do is undo the fill plug before you do the drain. So in case you cannot get it off, obviously you don't drain your diff and then you're stuck here because this is a rubber cover. We're not too worried about it. So let's just go drain this. The oil should be 1.8 liters, I believe is the spec. So let's just go swap it out. That's it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like what you saw, thumbs up. If you want to see some more Sprinter content, click subscribe. If you have any questions about the job, by all means, comment below. I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. It would have been a lot easier on a lift. Obviously, like, the truck cannot fit in my garage there, so I cannot get on the lift. Other than that, keep an eye on it. It's probably not a very common problem if you're south of the border, but here in Canada, we have lots of salt on the roads. And to be honest, I kind of just wanted to show you the actual design of the spring, because to me this is not the best thing. The centering pin fits right there, and as I can tell, it's basically sheared right where the centering pin fits. So as far as I can tell, where that pin sits, you're gonna have water and salt kind of coming through, and as you can tell, it's basically just cracked in and corroded. It's not a very good design. The other good thing that I'm really happy that we changed the diff. This is the diff oil, and this is not very good. So I don't know what the mileage on that junkyard rear axle is, but I'm really happy that we did this. So that's it. You guys have yourself a nice day, and stay safe on the roads.